blown by. Then we're going to get into the Super Wildcard Weekend matchups. We're going to do the gambling predictions and previews for that as well. We're also going to get into some of the coaches' firings on Black Monday and some of the head coaching vacancies throughout the league, as well as GM stuff, some of the coordinator jobs as well. So yeah, let's just jump right into this thing. We're going to start with the first game of the weekend on Saturday, which was the Chiefs versus the Raiders. The Chiefs get the job done. I don't know, everybody I feel like by now has already seen the viral clip of the ring around the rosy, weird play call by Andy Reid in that Chiefs offense. It ended up going for a score. They called it back because of a phantom holding call. I think the NFL just didn't want the Raiders to be embarrassed even more than they already were at that point. So it doesn't really matter. Chiefs got the job done. They secure the 1 seed on Saturday early that day. And then we jump into the nightcap on Saturday, which was the Jaguars versus Titans. This was a win and get in game. It was, for all the marbles in the AFC South, whoever won that game was going to go into the playoffs and be the 4th seed there. And the Jaguars found a way to get it done. Trevor Lawrence and that offense did not have the best showing in the world. The Titans really did throw the absolute kitchen sink at the Jaguars in order to try to win this game when they were kind of just, they were behind because of the fact that, or they're reaching from behind because of the fact that obviously Ryan Tannehill is not in there right now. He had ankle surgery, so he was out. They do not have any trust in Malik Willis, so they had their 3rd-string quarterback in there in Josh Dobbs, who did a very valiant job of trying to get that job done. He made some plays. He did what Vrabel and that coaching staff wanted him to do. It just did not work out for them in the end. They just had a strip sack, fumble, scoop and score for a touchdown that ended up pretty much settling that game in the end by the Jaguars. And that was all she wrote. Jaguars get the 4th seed, and we move on to the next game here. That's going to be Bills versus Patriots. This is basically the first game kicked off, obviously since all the other stuff, for the Bills at least, I should say. And they take the first play, the kickoff, straight back for a touchdown. Nyheim Hines returns it for a touchdown. It's like, it's crazy how, the world works. It's wild that, all of the, the prayers for Damar Hamlin and everybody just wanting him to be okay. It turns into just a crazy storybook type of ending where he looks like he is on a full road to recovery. And then obviously the Bills just have some magic happen in the first. They haven't had, I think I heard the stat that there literally hadn't been a kickoff return touchdown for the Bills in 3 years and 3 months to the day, which is crazy because Damar Hamlin's number is number 3. So just some really weird stuff going on there, really magical stuff. Impressive, win by the Bills eventually, beating the Patriots. Patriots needed that win to secure themselves in the playoffs. But they couldn't get it done. So the Bills move on. Obviously, they become the 2 seed. And let's go into the next game here. We have the Vikings versus the Bears. The Vikings get the job done here. They secure themselves that 3 seed in the NFC. Bears basically were just kind of tanking this game because they knew they had a chance at the 1 seed, or not the 1 seed, the number 1 overall pick in the draft next year. So they tanked this game essentially. Nathan Peterman was starting for their, as their QB, and Vikings get the job done. Nothing crazy there. I was kind of hoping Justin Jefferson would get the, receiving record, but he did not get it, unfortunately. But, it is what it is. Next game, Bengals versus Ravens. Bengals get the job done here. The Ravens did not play Tyler Huntley or, obviously, Lamar Jackson. They're hoping to get Lamar back for this playoff game, potentially. If not, obviously, they will have Tyler Huntley available for this one, I believe. They started Anthony Brown in this one, and the Ravens fought tough. They weren't giving up by any stretch of the imagination, and the Bengals just eventually got the job done. Joe Burrow, after the game, just quote of the year for him was, "My Super Bowl window is my entire career," and so that's Joe Burrow in a nutshell, honestly. So he's all confidence all the time. So good for him. They're going to be the 3 seed in the AFC. So let's go to the next game. Texans versus Colts. This doesn't have any playoff implications or anything like that. But I thought it would, I should mention it considering the fact that it seems like from stories coming out after the fact that the Texans on Sunday or before Sunday told Lovie Smith that they were going to go ahead and fire him after the season ended. And so he did exactly what he probably should have done in that situation and won the game anyways, which essentially stripped them of the #1 overall pick in the 2023 draft, which eventually gave it to his old team that he used to head coach in the Chicago Bears. So he really stuck it to the Texans, which, you know, they've been running this franchise into the ground for years. And, you know, it's just back-to-back 1 year, you know, 1 year in and out quarterbacks from David Culley to now Lovie Smith. It's just a disgrace of a franchise they got going on over there in Houston. So hopefully they can get some stuff, you know, back on track. But man, they just they keep shooting themselves in the foot by making terrible decisions essentially. So next game we have the Dolphins versus the Jets. The Dolphins win this thing 11-6. I mean, absolute barn burner. This game was just not very, you know, I don't know, entertaining in general. Obviously, you have Skylar Thompson starting for the Dolphins. The Jets are kind of reeling as of late. The Dolphins find a way to get it done, and they make the playoffs as the last seed in the AFC. So they make it. We're going to see if Tua can potentially play in this first playoff game. If not, then it's going to be a tough, you know, road ahead for them trying to get to the playoffs. If not, I mean, they're going to have to play the Bills in the first round, which is not going to be good if Tua's not starting. Next game, we have Panthers-Saints. Once again, another game that doesn't have any playoff implications or anything like that, so normally I would skip it. But in this instance, for my sake, my fandom, I am a huge Panthers fan now because they beat the Saints, which essentially gave the Eagles the number 10 overall pick in the 2023 NFL Draft, as well as the Eagles have their own as well because we own the Saints. So because of the Saints losing there, we get the 10th overall pick, and then whatever we end up with, you know, however long we go in the playoffs, whatever that's going to end up being. So really good looking forward to 2023 as an Eagles fan, and obviously, you know, in present time right now as the Eagles have the 1 seed. So we'll get to that later. But let's go to the next game, Steelers versus Browns. Steelers were motivated to get this win, obviously, because they had a chance at, you know, sliding into the AFC playoffs. If they won this game, they needed a little bit of help. They actually needed the Dolphins and the Patriots to both lose. They got one of the two. They did not get the Dolphins, you know, loss, obviously, so that kicks them out of the playoffs, unfortunately. But at least the Steelers did win this game, which keeps that streak of Mike Tomlin having a record of 500 or better for his entire career, which I think is an incredible accomplishment for him. He's a great head coach, and he just makes chicken salad out of chicken shit a lot of times. Excuse my French there. But, I mean, he's just a great head coach, and I'm a big fan of his. Next game, Eagles versus Giants. Obviously, this was a big game for the Eagles. They have squandered the last 2 opportunities to go ahead and lock up the 1 seed in the NFC East by losing to the Cowboys and then the Saints, both without Jalen Hurts. With Gardner Minshew in there, he was not playing well, obviously, in this last game against the Saints. So the Eagles went ahead out there and said, Jalen, you're going to have to start this last game. I know the Giants are starting their backups in this one because, you know, they're pretty much locked into that 6th seed in the NFC playoff picture. But we just need you to go ahead and secure this W. Eagles got the job done. It was not pretty by any stretch of the imagination. The offense was not creative. It was not what the Eagles normally run because they just were not trying to put Jalen Hurts in harm's way considering his shoulder injury. And even after the game, they're saying that Hurts is still technically hurt. So hopefully with the fact that the Eagles locked up this 1 seed, you get another week or 2-ish of rest before you have to actually play a playoff game. And so hopefully by then he will be much more healed up at that point, and we will have the entire playbook to our disposal in order for us to try to continue to move forward in the playoffs. Next game, Commanders versus Cowboys. The Commanders win this one. The Cowboys actually did have something to play for here, so they were playing their starters. The Commanders were not really playing all of their starters. They played most of them, I would say. But they didn't have Antonio Gibson or Brian Robinson in at running back. They just had, I think his name was Anthony Williams, a running back that they have. He's number 41 on their team. And they had Sam Howell starting in this matchup here. And he looked pretty good. I mean, it wasn't the best game ever from him. Obviously, it's his first ever start, so you can't ask but so much. I think he was like a 3rd-round rookie QB coming out of the draft. And I mean, obviously he was impressive at Carolina, and then now he has got his first win under his belt as a Commander. And honestly, based on the way it looked you would hope, he would get a potential chance at a competition at least next season. I don't know what they're going to do at QB there, but I mean, I think you got to give him a little bit of a chance because the arm strength looked like it was there. The accuracy looked like it was pretty solid. He has a bit of a running ability, which is nice. He had a rushing touchdown in this game. But on the flip side here, the Cowboys, this is not the way you want to end the season here. Obviously, like I said, they had something to play for because if they were to win this game, the Eagles and 49ers lose, they would have took the 1 seed from the Eagles. So they were obviously trying to win this game. Maybe they were scoreboard watching with the Eagles game and the 49ers game, and as the game, they may have been getting updates throughout the game saying, hey, kind of let up, don't get hurt essentially, because if you were essentially just stuck in that position anyways, in the 5 seed, then it is what it is. But the Cowboys did lose this game. Dak Prescott once again looks a little bit shaky. I mean, he has a ton of pick sixes this season already. I think he's got I think it's either up to 7 or 8 straight games with an interception. So really the Cowboys are kind of limping into the playoffs here, not injury wise necessarily, but just morale, confidence wise. I mean, you thought you had confidence after the last few weeks, beating the Eagles and stuff like that. And I think that a lot of that was false confidence considering the fact that the Eagles turned the ball over 4 times and had Gardner Minshew in there. That's neither here nor there. Just a biased Eagles fan, apparently. But at the same time, you got to be a little bit worried if you're a Cowboys fan. You have to go on the road, obviously, against obviously probably the greatest quarterback of all time in Tom Brady. So that's not a great spot considering you don't have super high confidence either. And it's on Monday night. So whoever wins that game, unfortunately, is going to have short rest going into the next matchup in the divisional round against whoever, not whoever, the Eagles. Whoever wins there is probably going to go play against the Eagles, depending on some other things happening. But for the most part, that's the biggest probability there. Let's go to the next game. Seahawks versus Rams. Seahawks get the job done here, which basically it was the one part of 2 that they needed to get done in order to make the playoffs here. And they got their part of the job done, and then they had to wait for the night game, which was the Lions and Packers. Because the Seahawks won, it essentially knocked the Lions out of contention in the NFC playoffs. So that was unfortunate for them because everybody was looking forward to kind of that matchup for the last playoff spot. Packers, Lions, division rivals, obviously. So obviously, Lions didn't have much to play for, but they came out and played really hard anyways, and they knew it was their division rival. They did not want the Packers and Aaron Rodgers to make the playoffs, and that's exactly what they did. They came out, played hard, and ended up winning the game, sending the Packers home. And so, obviously, the Lions going into the offseason, stock up for sure. I mean, at this point, you have to have a lot of confidence in Dan Campbell, in that offensive, staff, even the defensive staff. I mean, if they continue to just get pieces around them, they obviously own the Rams' first-round draft pick because of the Jared Goff trade. And so they just keep, adding really good, just blue-collar, straight-up studs, or blue-chip players when it comes to the draft. They're going to be a really scary team moving forward. So Lions, awesome. Packers, the offseason is going to be a little bit tricky for them for the 3rd year in a row or 2nd year in a row, whatever it may be, with Aaron Rodgers potentially mulling over retirement. So that's probably going to get annoying as the offseason progresses. I'm a big Aaron Rodgers fan, but I was getting a bit tired of is he going to retire? Is he not? Is he coming back to the Packers? Is he going to get traded? All of that hubbubaloo or whatever you might want to call it. It was getting a little bit tiresome at the end of the offseason last year, so I hope it's a little bit more cut and dry this offseason. But that's pretty much it for the Week 18 recap. I want to get right into I'm just going to go ahead and list off the AFC, NFC, 1 through 7, what the playoffs seedings are. So on the AFC side, we have the Chiefs at 1, Bills at 2, Bengals 3, Jaguars 4, Chargers 5, Ravens 6, Dolphins 7. On the NFC side, you have the Eagles 1, 49ers 2, Vikings 3, Buccaneers 4, Cowboys 5, and the Giants 6, and the Seahawks 7. So that's just listed off what the seeding is right now. Before we get into the Super Wildcard Weekend, I'm going to go ahead and get into these coaches' firings and retirings and step downs, whatever you want to call them. First off, the biggest one on Black Monday was the Cliff Kingsbury firing. they fire him. I'm a huge fan of this move for the sake of Cardinals fans. I think he was holding that offense and that team back more than Kyler or whoever else you want to try to give blame, Steve Keim, any of those people. And I'll get to that later. Steve Keim also he stepped down for health issues is what they were considering it, which I assume is just like are you either like kind of step down, resign, or we're going to have to fire you in quotations. But yeah, Cliff Kingsbury goes. That's, I think, going to be a good thing for the Cardinals. Next year is going to be a little bit rough for the Cardinals, I believe, just because of the fact there's going to be a lot of new stuff going on there. Obviously, you have Kyler being hurt. He's probably not going to start or play in a lot of games next season because of how late in the season he tore his ACL. Zach Ertz tore his ACL, so we don't know. That was also very late in the season, so I don't know, when he's going to be able to come back either. And then obviously, like I said, Steve Keim, stepping down. So they're going to have to find a GM and a head coach that will be in sync, in tandem, which I think is the best way to do it anyway. So that's probably going to be, for the better for them. But yeah, that's just the start of that. Obviously, Matt Rule for the Panthers, he got fired earlier in the season. Steve Wilks did a valiant job in, taking over the interim head coach spot for him and almost had them in the NFC South playoffs. But I just think they got to stay away from the college head coaches. I saw where they were interviewing Jim Harbaugh, and I was like, what are you doing? That's essentially the exact same thing that you just had in Matt Rule. So I thought that was a dumb decision, but it looks like they're out on him already. So that's probably a good thing for the Panthers, but obviously they need a head coach. I think they also fired their defensive coordinator, Phil Snow, along with Matt Rule. So, and that was also mid-season, when Matt Rule got fired. But all right, let's go to the next one. Browns defensive coordinator Joe Woods. Essentially, the Browns did not have a very good season. Deshaun Watson came back, and he was just not so hot. Essentially, Kevin Stefanski wasn't going to get fired for this job he had because of all the drama surrounding it. The split between Jacoby Brissett and Deshaun Watson, the two QBs thing. He just wasn't going to be the fall guy for this, so somebody had to be. So that was Joe Woods, unfortunately. Next one, Nathaniel Hackett obviously got, axed as the head coach of the Broncos. That was a few weeks ago now. So we'll see how that goes. Apparently, they're very interested in Sean Payton. They're willing to, separate themselves from some more draft assets in order to try to make that trade with the Saints, because I think he's still under contract with the Saints. So, Nathaniel Hackett out. Potentially Sean Payton back in. I don't know for sure. Sean Payton will probably end up with another head coaching job this offseason, if not next offseason. It just depends on how things, operate in the NFL. Then the next one, obviously, I kind of alluded to it earlier. Lovie Smith gets fired by the Houston Texans, and he, gave them a middle finger on the way out with the win there in order to strip them of that #1 overall pick. So he's out. Nobody's going to want this job because obviously the way this franchise has operated the last few years with the two one-and-done head coaches with terrible rosters. What do you expect of the head coach whenever your roster looks like that? So that is what it is. Once again, I think they have interviewed or asked to interview actually the Eagles defensive coordinator, Jonathan Gannon, who they actually interviewed last year as well. So maybe they're re-interested in him, which for me personally, Jonathan Gannon is very Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. A lot of times, I think his defensive schemes have little to no teeth, and it's just all based on the roster talent and how talented the Eagles roster has been, and how many good players that Howie Roseman has, put together on that squad. And Jonathan Gannon is just, he may or may not be holding them back. I don't know what the answer to that is. Honestly, that's a very convoluted situation there. It looks very good at times. It looks terrible at times. So we'll see what happens going through the playoffs and how that may end, or, whatever that may be. We'll see if Jonathan Gannon sticks around in Philadelphia. Let's go next. Obviously, Frank Reich got fired midseason as well as the offensive coordinator there in Marcus Brady. Then they threw in, obviously, Jeff Saturday there. That was kind of a mess. They won their first game, then lost pretty much all the rest of them. It was an absolute disastrous year for them. Looks like Chris Ballard's probably going to be back as GM, which is, neither here nor there for me. I don't think he's as good as people think he is, but people really like him around the league, so I don't know. It's weird. Yeah, we'll go to the next one. Titans, they fired their offense coordinator, Todd Downing. Somebody had to be the fall guy for how bad that Titans season kind of went. Even though, they did have the shot at potentially going into the playoffs here, it just did not go as they planned. The offense was pretty stagnant for most of the season. Pretty much the only thing that saved them was the fact that Derrick Henry is so good. So that's pretty much that for the Titans. GM firings. John Robinson of the Titans got fired the game after A.J. Brown went for 1 billion yards and 2 touchdowns on them against the Eagles, which he decided to trade in the draft last offseason, which thank you very much. The Eagles love that, and I love that as an Eagles fan. And so also the next one, like I said, I alluded to this earlier with the Steve Keim. He technically stepped down / got fired, whatever you may want to call it that. But that's pretty much it for the coaches firings and GM firings / stepping downs, whatever you want to call it. Yeah, let's just move on to Super Wildcard Weekend, gambling prediction previews. First game is going to be the 49ers -10 against the Seahawks. Man, this is tough because this is a rivalry game, obviously. 49ers and Seahawks both in the NFC West there. These games are always usually close. The problem is, obviously the Seahawks are a team where their defensive or their rush defense is very susceptible to getting absolutely just run over. And obviously the 49ers are probably the best running team in the league left. I think they probably were all season anyways, especially with Christian McCaffrey now in there. So just 10 is a lot of points. I guess I'm going to take the Seahawks in the spread, but the 49ers are playing incredible. Brock Purdy, once again, he's just doing what Kyle Shanahan wants him to do, and it's working out right now. He's using all the field, unlike Jimmy G kind of was a lot of the times when he was the quarterback of the team. So 49ers look good. They're a scary team. Defense is good. Running game's good. Brock Purdy's, making that, passing attack, at least average, if not like slightly above average. So, and they got weapons. So it's going to be a tough team to beat. But I will take the Seahawks +10 right this second. This could change. But I will take the Seahawks. Next game, Chargers -1 versus the Jaguars. Man, this is basically a pick'em. This game is going to be in Jacksonville. I gotta go with the Chargers here, though. Jacksonville did not look too hot against the Titans here. I think there could be a situation where, this is the playoffs. They're going to throw everything at the teams they're playing right now. I know Doug Peterson's very creative, so he probably has some stuff up his sleeve. You know what? As I'm kind of explaining this, I don't know if Joe Lombardi actually does have anything up his sleeve, because I think he's a terrible offensive coordinator. But there's a chance. You never know. This is going to be the first time Herbert's been in the playoffs, as well as Trevor Lawrence. I'm going to love to see that matchup. Big-time QB names dueling back and forth. That's going to be awesome. But I will go with the Chargers. I just think they're a little bit of a better team right now. But it's not by a lot. I think this is going to be a great game. Next game, Bills -10.5 versus the Dolphins. I think this line is very high right now in the Bills' favor because of the fact that we don't know for sure if Tua is going to play in this game. I think if Tua is playing in this game, this drops to maybe 5 or less when it comes to the spread. If Tua doesn't play, I do like the Bills at -10.5. If Tua does play, I will take the Dolphins in the points. I think the Dolphins can play them tough. It's probably not going to snow again, so it might be a little bit different story for the Bills. The Bills have been playing not as well as people, I think they have. If the Bills did not score both of those kickoff returns for touchdowns on this past Sunday against the Patriots, there's a chance that the Bills could have lost that game. So it's not like – I do understand that they were very distracted with the Damar Hamlin situation, so that may be a very good excuse for them. Not to make that like, a bad connotation there necessarily, but the Bills, I feel like, have been slightly struggling. But Josh Allen, man, in the playoffs, he always steps it up. So I like the Bills here, obviously. If, like I said again, if Tua ends up not playing, -10.5, taking it for the Bills. If Tua does play, I will take the Dolphins in that situation. Next game, Vikings -3 versus Giants. Man. The NFC East, man. what's crazy is I don't even think the Giants are very talented, but I think the Vikings have such a knack for just blowing leads, or not necessarily blowing leads, just keeping teams around that they shouldn't let stay around in games. And if you let the Giants stick around in a game, they're big, they're tough, they're physical. By the end of that game, they're going to be outplaying you because they're just bigger, faster, and stronger usually. And I like Brian Daboll. I think is a good head coach, man. Unfortunately for the Eagles and the rest of the NFC East moving forward, I think I'm going to go with the Giants as the underdogs here. I'll take the Giants in the points in this situation. I think the Giants have a very good chance at actually winning this ball game, but I will take them +3, I guess you could say. Bengals -6.5 versus the Ravens. This is another line, kind of like the Bills and Dolphins, where we're not 100% sure if Lamar Jackson's going to play in this matchup. So obviously, if Lamar does not play in this, 6.5 is still a lot of points for the Bengals. The Ravens just played the Bengals tough this last game with Anthony Brown, so this wasn't even Tyler Huntley. Man, I almost want to go Ravens no matter what here. You know what? I'm going to stick to that. I think the Bengals probably win, but I'll go Ravens to cover. Last game, Monday night. This is so funny that it's on Monday night. I think this just sets up perfectly for anybody that is a Cowboys hater, which is me for sure. So Cowboys -2.5 versus the Buccaneers. The Cowboys are a road favorite against the greatest quarterback of all time. Let's just think about that one more time. The Cowboys are a road favorite, 2.5 points over the Buccaneers and Tom Brady. I'm going to take the home dog every single time, no matter what. I will take that. I've got Tom Brady behind me with points. I'll take it. I know the Buccaneers have played like absolute dog crap the last few weeks. They played well and they look good against the Panthers, but it is, once again, the Panthers who just barely beat the Saints by a field goal, and I don't think either one of their teams scored more than like 12 points in the game or something like that. I don't know. Or maybe the Panthers had like 13. I don't know. Whatever. Who cares? But yeah, I know the Buccaneers have played bad, but the Buccaneers have had the Cowboys number the last few years. They beat them 2 years in a row on the opening night. So, or the first game of the season for each team, I should say. Man, I'm going Tampa Bay. I got to take them. I know I'm a Cowboys hater, but honestly, if I have to be really honest, I almost would prefer the Cowboys come to Philadelphia in the divisional round than Tom Brady come to Philadelphia in the divisional round. I know that sounds crazy based on the way both teams have played all season. I just think that the Cowboys have the false confidence that they beat the Eagles last time, but it was without Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts back in there. I think the Eagles smoked the Cowboys. So, but the unknown. It's honestly just the unknown, the mystery of Tom Brady, and if he can flip that switch in the playoffs. I just don't even want to find out the answer of if he's got another gear for this playoff run for this year. So I prefer the Cowboys to go in there, but I think the Tampa Bay Buccaneers will probably win this game, and I will take them and the points, obviously, at 2.5. That pretty much does it for the podcast. I appreciate everybody listening this week. It's been an awesome season. It has absolutely flown by. I really appreciate everybody tuning in, if you ever did. Once again, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, our Twitter, our Instagram, our TikTok. Once again, shout out to my boy Weston once again for editing all these all season long. We're going to do some more interesting stuff in the off season for a little bit different content, obviously. Maybe doing a little bit of a segment. We will see. I will announce that as soon as I know more information on that. But yeah, I will talk to you guys next week after Super Wildcard Weekend. Peace.